Good evening, everyone. I'm Elisa Liz Munoz, the Executive Director of the International Women's Media Foundation. We are honored that you have joined us on this very important and significant night, one that is close to our hearts and at the core of our work, the Courage in Journalism Awards. Tonight is a chance to pause and recognize the important, singular work that connects us all, work that ignites both understanding and appreciation. Before we get to the awards, I'd like to acknowledge an important milestone. This evening marks the 15th anniversary that Bank of America has generously been our national presenting sponsor of the Courage in Journalism Awards. They have been a truly vital and unwavering partner. Bank of America is dedicated to our work. They are all in and fully committed to our mission of lifting women's voices around the world. Thank you so much to Bank of America again for your dedication to press freedom, gender equity, and a diverse news media. With additional support from CNN, Bloomberg, the New York Times, the NBA, and Walt Disney Company, the IWMF is even more empowered. These generous, wide-reaching contributions allow us not only to continue, but to grow. And finally, the Courage Awards would not be possible without all of you. So thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in tonight from near and far. If you can support our work, I hope you'll take the time during this event to do so by going to paypal.me/IWMF, which you'll see on your screen right now. This evening, we will share several videos with you. The stories they tell will provide the world of tonight's honorees and demonstrate what we work so hard to achieve and enable every day. Some days and weeks demand more than others, such is the case with the crisis in Afghanistan. In August, the IWMF shifted to operate as a press freedom and humanitarian organization. We were not alone in watching a dangerous trifecta emerge, being a citizen in a conflict area, a journalist under threat, and a woman. And while much work remains to be done for those left behind and those who managed to get out of Afghanistan, our gratitude goes out to everyone who quite literally came to the rescue. And now, here's more about who we are and who we help.
The stories of today may not be in your newsfeed. Why? Because the journalism industry still isn't equitable. So ask yourself, whose byline are you reading? The IWMF works tirelessly to ensure the news media reflects the diversity of our world. Join us.
And now I'm delighted to introduce this evening's event chair. Jeff Zucker is the president of CNN Worldwide and the chairman of Warner Media News and Sports. Too few organizations encourage the work of women journalists quite like CNN. On and off camera, when women are intrinsic to the many hours, weeks, and months required to produce the truth. Often, only a woman can get critical access to sources and developing stories. Jeff's decision-making reflects why it is essential to send women journalists to cover stories where few others may be. More than once, this has proven to be a wise choice, especially as we reflect on the work of past Courage winners, Christiane Amanpour, Arwa Damon, and Nema Abagir. Please welcome Jeff Zucker.
Thank you, Elisa, and I'm honored to be here, to stand in support of women journalists and the work that they do. That belief is the foundation of the IWMF and part of the DNA at CNN. Tonight's event is a singular celebration in this industry, and it comes at a unique, critical time in news. Reporting outside of the headlines, before the headlines even, that is what the IWMF exists to uphold. They protect, support, and promote the kinds of journalists we're honoring tonight, which truly makes this event stand apart. Tonight's remarkable stories include issues of importance to rural, marginalized, and lower caste communities produced by an Indian news agency entirely run by local women. Beautiful and brutal photojournalism that weaves in and out of our front pages and brings us a vision of racial reckoning and social justice. The exposure of rampant sexual abuse and corruption committed by members of a religious organization in Peru. And finally, the right to report no matter the consequences when you believe your country needs to witness public protest. These are all stories that take determination and the resolve to never stop reporting, come what may. It takes a similar resolve to find these stories and lift them up. This comes at a time when the industry is working towards making greater strides in examining who we are and who we need to be. We must reflect the audience that we serve. Tonight, I find hope in knowing there will only be more time for reporting like the stories we honor tonight. And speaking of someone who understands determination and the resolve to never stop reporting, it is my pleasure, my honor, to introduce a woman who distinguished herself long ago and continues to be a force in the field of international news today. She stands apart. And while she is in a class of her own as a journalist, she is not alone in her recent health scare, which she has so bravely shared with the world in hopes of helping others. We are lucky that she is doing great now and that she calls CNN home, and we happily share her with you tonight. Please welcome my friend and great colleague, Christiane Amanpour.
Hi there, it's Christiane joining you from London, and I want to say thank you to Jeff. I could not be prouder or happier that you and CNN are event chair this year, and thank you for those kind words, really. It is a pleasure to be with you all this evening in celebration of this year's Courage in Journalism Award winners, and thanks everyone for joining this virtual celebration. 2021, as we all remember, began with appalling scenes from where? The United States Capitol. It was an insurrection that would send shudders through not just the nation and much of the world, but also to everybody watching. They were watching American democracy itself being violently challenged. And this was causing a lot of anxiety. And a few months later, on the other side of the world, Myanmar's military junta simply snuffed out its democracy with a coup against its civilian leader, Aung San Suu Kyi. And in Russia, of course, the opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, was sentenced to 3 years in prison. No opposition, no credible opposition is allowed to contest elections there. Race and social justice was again on the line as well. In Minneapolis, police officer Derek Chauvin was sentenced to 22.5 years in prison for killing George Floyd, an 8-minute and 45-second murder that was witnessed by the whole world, and that sparked a whole movement. And in a catastrophic turn of events, the summer saw the Taliban take back control of Afghanistan. I was there when they first came in 1996, and now after 20 years of American and international efforts to bring freedom and human rights to the country, especially to the women, our screens were filled with images of desperate Afghans, again, especially the women, trying to flee the country and escape this militant and retrograde Islamic fundamentalist group. These stories, these images, they matter, especially to those who we honor tonight. And what these women reported brought on a backlash and attacks against them. And this is the case every year from all corners of the world where IWMF honors these brave women journalists. Women of color, we know, are hit hardest by the anger and the cruelty of those who want to silence the truth. Some of the winners tonight are actually still sitting in jail, like many of their predecessors. But These women will not stop, and neither will the IWMF stop supporting them. We owe them a lot. So now let me introduce Khaba Lahoriya team. That is the very first group that we're going to look at and celebrate now. Here is their video.
हम कहते हैं everyday stories of everyday people in खबर लहरिया. That's news.
These women have become the voice of rural India.
अब ये है कि किसी काम को लेकर महिला को लेकर तो ये नहीं होता है कि हम महिला हैं तो हम ये काम नहीं कर सकते, इस जगह नहीं जा सकते.
ये नहर कब बनी थी आपके यहाँ?
ये लगभग पानी यहाँ आज तक आया ही नहीं है.
This is the team of Khabar Lahoriya, the first and only news organization run solely by women from marginalized communities in India.
और ऐसी महिलाओं को जो दलित, आदिवासी, अल्पसंख्यक है.
The fact that they started off as a print newspaper and then educated themselves about what it took to produce an all-digital news organization with their mobile phones. And what really struck us is that this didn't just happen overnight.
पत्रकार तो बनी ही है.
They invested in each of the individuals who do the reporting. Each of these women not only educated themselves, but put themselves and their families at risk to report on their communities.
जो फर्जी वसूली थाना अध्यक्ष और सिपाहियों के द्वारा की जाती थी, उसमें काफी तहलका मची.
And the Khaba Lahoriya team is growing. There are now 30 reporters working in 13 districts, and according to the organization, reaching 5 million people a month through multiple platforms.
Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, इन सभी के द्वारा ग्रामीण खबरों को लाखों लोगों की नजरों में पहुंचाती हूँ.
क्या स्थिति है खेतों की, क्यों ऐसे बैठे हैं?
पानी नहीं यहाँ ऐसा है.
कई बार इतनी चुनौती मिली कि मैं गांव से भगा दिया, और आज वो वक्त है जब लोग हमें फोन करके खुद में बुलाते हैं. लोग जानते हैं कि महिलाएं अच्छे से काम करती हैं.
They take these stories seriously.
सर, मैं खबर लहरिया अखबार से बोल रही हूँ.
And I think they do that because they are women, they're mothers, and they believe the individuals who are sharing these stories and demand accountability.
तो क्या लगता है खबर निकालने से कुछ असर हुआ?
हाँ है, बहुत बढ़िया असर हुआ है और काफी राहत मिली. हाँ, खुश है.
हमारी तरफ से सभी दर्शकों को नमस्कार. मैं मीरा देवी खबर लहरिया में मैनेजिंग एडिटर के पद पर काम करती हूँ. खबर लहरिया में 16 सालों से काम कर रही हूँ.
और मैं गीता देवी खबर लहरिया में चीफ रिपोर्टर के पद पर काम करती हूँ और 12 सालों से काम कर रही हूँ.
खबर लहरिया शुरू करने का मुख्य उद्देश्य दूर दराज की ग्रामीण पत्रकारिता खबरों को कवर करना और हाशिए पर रहने वाले लोगों की आवाजों को बुलंद करना, सरकार और समाज के बीच में लाना, क्योंकि ऐसी आवाजें मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया के लिए जरूरी नहीं समझी जाती हैं. नारीवादी नजरिए के साथ ग्रामीणों की आवाज को खबर लहरिया बुलंद करता है और साथ ही सरकार और ग्रामीण में बसे लोगों के बीच लोकतंत्र की कड़ी को जोड़ता है.
हमारे इस नारीवादी नजरिए की शुरुआत 2002 में प्रिंट अखबार के रूप में हुई थी. आज हम भारत के मात्र एक डिजिटल न्यूज रूम हैं और इसमें अल्पसंख्यक, दलित, आदिवासी महिलाएं काम करती हैं.
इस कार्यक्रम में सभी महिला पत्रकारों की संघर्षों की कहानी सुन करके खुद को बहुत साहस, ऊर्जा और ताकत मिलती है. कार्यक्रम में आए सभी साथियों को बहुत बहुत बधाई, शुभकामनाएं इस अवार्ड को जीतने के लिए. उनकी अपनी अलग अलग संघर्षों की कहानी है, उनके लिए बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं.
हम इस अवार्ड को पाकर बहुत ही गर्व महसूस कर रहे हैं। हम आप सबका दिल से शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहते हैं। हम IWMF ज्यूरी टीम के बहुत बहुत आभारी हैं। आशा करते हैं कि हमारे इस सफर से महिला पत्रकारों को हौसला मिलेगा और स्वतंत्र पत्रकारिता की आवाज बुलंद हो।
The underrepresentation of women in the news persists, and there's been no improvement in the 21st century. A single woman's voice today is countered by at least 3 men, which is why we're supporting women journalists with more opportunities to tell all of our stories. So if you care about gender equity, diverse representation, or freedom of expression, you care about our work. Without representative voices, you'll never hear the full story. Join us.
What wonderful winners they were. And now we're going to honor Vanessa Charlot, American photojournalist. Now, she herself has described her photojournalism as an extension of my own being. A Haitian American, Vanessa is known for capturing images of marginalized people and Black communities. Her photography is stark and it's intimate. It reveals the intersection between spirituality, socioeconomics, politics, and gender expression. In 2020 and this year, 2021, she focused on documenting the public reaction to deadly violence against Black Americans, including Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. Now, Vanessa has endured endless violent slurs, and she's also received death threats, most notably when covering the Proud Boys, that white militia. And she is our next honoree, as I say, this evening. So we're just going to show you some of her work.
Summer 2020 was the physical manifestation of Black pain, Black rage.
I wanted people to be curious about, like, what would make a Black mother in the middle of a global pandemic hit the streets.
They're shooting tear gas! Shooting tear gas!
My name is Vanessa Charlot. I'm a documentary photographer currently residing in St. Louis, Missouri.
Don't arrest me, arrest police!
Outside of my windows, literally, there were thousands of protesters.
She told us that she sometimes wore an army hat in the hope that that would protect her, and that sometimes it really did. For Vanessa to be in that situation, as a veteran, being attacked by the police really hit home for us.
I understood as a photographer, and specifically as a Black woman photographer, I wanted to be a part of telling stories that were authentic, nuanced, and expressed the complexities of what people were seeing around the world.
Vanessa's ability to capture the woman holding the flag upside down in her photograph, American Patriot, is so symbolic of what everybody in the protest was feeling, which is this world is upside down. This should not be happening.
The upside down flag means that you are at war in your own country. So personally, for me to know that I have served a country, now I am at war in that country for ideas that I went and fought for. There's a very uncomfortable irony about that. To be celebrated among colleagues, among people that I look up to, is very humbling, and I'm very, very grateful.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, I am honored to receive this award and join the ranks of women whom I have long admired and respected. I want to thank the International Women's Media Foundation for championing the voices of women in journalism around the world. My biggest thanks goes to my family, who have supported and helped me strengthen my commitment to covering and telling stories that matter, stories of people and communities often left out of the mainstream. Doing this work does require courage, but not the kind that I was prepared for. As a veteran of the U.S. Army, I did not imagine that courage would be wrapped in silence, in subdued rage, or in vulnerability. Yet, as someone who was on the front lines during periods of rage, anger, and pain in our own backyards, right here in America, I realized that I had yet more to learn about this idea and the lessons that courage would teach me. This work that we do as women journalists requires a kind of courage that dares to honor the humanity and integrity of each person we encounter, whether we know them or not, so that the stories we tell are complex, nuanced, and whole, as we are. Although this work is often thankless, I'm grateful to all those whose vulnerability has strengthened me, whose courage has humbled me. I am honored to have used my voice and my lens to bear witness from the front lines and tell these stories that make them visible. This award is for them, the silent, nameless warriors. Thank you.
For the IWMF, impact means securing diverse voices in the news media. Today, that means those who represent press freedom, gender equity, and diversity must help journalists in their greatest time of need. This past year, IWMF co-launched the Coalition Against Online Violence and the Online Violence Response Hub, setting the media industry on notice that it's not just another tweet. Violent rhetoric leads to violent action, and we must protect women journalists to keep them in the field. This summer, IWMF pledged its full support to women journalists in Afghanistan as another seemingly insurmountable crisis unfolded. Thanks to partner support, grassroots fundraising, and trust from our network, the IWMF received nearly $2 million directed toward journalists in need when it mattered most. Join us. Good evening. I'm Suzanne Mulvaux, co-chair of the IWMF's Board of Directors. I am so pleased to be with you here tonight to announce our 2021 Gwen Ifill Award winner. Gwen was a woman I was proud to call a mentor and a dear friend. When we lost Gwen 5 years ago, so many recalled her extraordinary traits. She was a trailblazer of quality, gender, and race in journalism. She saw her work as a craft. Gwen did indeed reach soaring heights in journalism. I should also say that Gwen was good fun. She valued the power of a great accessory and believed that leopard print was business casual. She was described as amazing for being both an anchor and a compass at the same time. Her audience, of course, knew her as an anchor at PBS. But out of the chair, she anchored us all. She believed fiercely in mentoring up, that this industry is not, as a colleague put her advice, just about climbing the ladder. It's about making sure you pull someone else up. The IWMF is committed to fulfilling this example. Our Gwen Ifill mentorship program is expanding, and 2021 marks the 5th year we have chosen an exemplary woman of color to receive the Gwen Ifill Award, in acknowledgement of a pioneering path blazed for many women journalists to come. With no further delay, tonight I am thrilled to announce Cece Way, the co-executive director of Open News, as this year's 2021 recipient of the Gwen Ifill Award. Tonight, you'll learn about Cece's work creating new communities for journalists of color and the journey she's taken to become a leader and mentor in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Back to you, Christian, and welcome, Cece. We are so excited to welcome you to the IWMF community.
So it's great. Thank you very much, Suzanne, for that. And Cece Way, congratulations. Let's talk for a few minutes about what this means to you, why you think you've been given this honor, and what you think you want to do with this. So first and foremost, it is a great honor to be bestowed with the Gwen Ifill Award this year. Tell me what it means to you.
Yeah, it is such an honor to be here, especially watching those videos and to be honored along these courageous women. The Gwen Ifill Award means an incredible amount to me because for me, I feel like the work that we do fighting for equity, for anti-racism, for change in journalism, and to make sure that we are uplifting other women journalists of color as we work, it is something that I think is far too rare of a brave act that is being recognized here in this award, but I think needs to be recognized in thousands of newsrooms on a day-to-day basis. And so getting this award almost feels like an extension and also a commitment, right, from IWMF modeling what the industry really can and should be doing.
So tell me, what is Open News and how did you get into this? Obviously, you saw it, you've experienced it, you've had your own, experiences in this business, knowing, a lot of the challenges that so many people face. Tell us how you're using Open News and how the coalition, DEI coalition that you've assembled is actually working.
Yeah, absolutely. I joined Open News almost 2 years ago now. And part of that shift for me, from being in a newsroom like ProPublica to going to a nonprofit organization like Open News, was about expanding the work that I wanted to do when it came to changing our industry, to going beyond a single newsroom that I was working for, to trying to see what levers could I push, how can I listen to people, and how do I create something so that we can all benefit as an entire industry. And the DEI Coalition really feels in line with that vision. So the idea was, in the midst of everything that was happening in 2020, I was talking to journalists from all types of newsrooms, trying to figure out what are your biggest challenges when you're trying to create change in your organization, whether that meant journalists who are serving to write new union contracts, asking for diversity and equity, or if it meant individuals who were working by themselves or on an ad hoc committee that was formed to sort of work with their newsrooms and try to figure out what can we change to make things better. And almost everyone universally said to me, the thing that is so hard, Cece, is that finding other people who are trying to do this work in another organization takes so much time and effort. And all I want to do is come together so we can learn from each other, so we can support each other, and so we can actually strategize, right, and move the conversation forward so that our actions can move forward. And so the DEI Coalition was really created out of that need. And it was also created with journalism community members, meaning people who worked as freelancers, people who worked as managers, people who worked in every type of newsroom, came together through an open call that we had at Open News. And they said, I want to volunteer my time because creating this space is important enough to me. And so with about more than 100 other people in journalism, we launched this DEI Coalition as a digital space on Slack in March of this year. And people can still join if that mission and commitment to action resonates with them.
Cece, let me just ask you, slightly more specifics about that, because it's great to have created that community. It's obviously fairly new now, but can you see tangible results? Can you see how it may be helping individuals or the collective, or is it too early?
I would say I can definitely see the seeds of change being really enabled and watered. So what I mean by that is that there are ways the community is structured so that people can feel as safe as possible talking about their newsrooms without violating some sort of privacy or safety concerns. But things that are already emerging out of it is that there's a sort of free flow of information where someone has a challenge one day. How do I deal with this kind of policy at my news organization? And you can sort of see right away people working at many different newsrooms responding, saying exactly what their organization's policy is, and then workshopping together what's something that's better, something that's more equitable that people could use now. In the near future, we may also be publishing some public resources that are available outside of the coalition. But then you also see just a lot of crowdsourcing. To give a really, really simple example, right? Something that people often want to know is like, what are salaries like, or what are we paying interns, concepts like that. And to be able to immediately get feedback and to just hear exact numbers, tangible information you can use to then go back to your organization and fight for a rate that you think is equitable or a policy that you think is equitable and have that backing and support and knowledge that's so hard to get otherwise. I think that's really where I see a lot of inspiration, and where I think it's really going to keep escalating.
Cece Wei, you're showing obviously the traits of leadership, and you're proving what Suzanne just told us that Gwen Ifill was all about, not just climbing the ladder, but dragging people up that ladder alongside you. So congratulations, it's great to have chatted, and keep up the great work. Thanks, Cece Wei. And our next honoree is the journalist Paola Ugaz. She became a household name in Peru with the publication of her book, Half Monks, Half Soldiers. That was 6 years ago. In it, 30 former members of a powerful organization affiliated with the Catholic Church detailed decades of psychological and sexual abuse, and Paola has continued to investigate, and she's now writing a second book on financial misdeeds. She's also fighting multiple lawsuits, as you can imagine, for allegedly defaming and for also perjury that come with a 3-year jail sentence. She's really fighting all of that and trying her best to continue doing her investigative work. Here's her video.
En la dimensión del daño que ha hecho el sodalicio, abusado física, sexual.
Her reporting rocked one of the most conservative countries in the world. Journalist Paola Ugaz has spent her career covering injustice and human rights abuses in South America. She's a correspondent for Spanish newspaper ABC and became a household name in Peru in 2015 when she co-authored a book alleging sexual and physical abuse within one of the largest lay communities linked to the Catholic Church.
Castigarse no solo a Figari, sino a toda la cúpula del sodalicio que ha recibido denuncias de abusos sexuales, físicos y psicológicos desde que empezó el sodalicio. Pero así hay muchísimas más victimarios de esta organización.
Ugaz's reporting helped launch a widespread sexual abuse investigation into top officials of the elite Catholic organization. The founder was eventually expelled from the group. Peru's conservative elite lashed out, filing a string of lawsuits and unrelenting physical threats against Ugaz.
Paola Ugaz represents almost a typical journalist in Latin America who has the audacity to uncover a powerful organization's malfeasance. Child abuse in the Catholic Church. I mean, how many journalists have been reporting on that? But she's doing it in a country where there's very little press freedom.
Tengo 2 amenazas de muerte.
The threats have not silenced Ugaz. She is currently probing sexual abuse at a Catholic boot camp for children in South America.
Ellos no pagan impuestos.
This is a common tactic, really, to stop her from doing her work. And the fact that she is standing up to those threats and attacks is truly courageous.
Upon reflection of her career and crusades, Paola Ugaz says she has no regrets. I consider it my duty to publish. This recognition will help other women journalists in the world to feel that they are not alone.
I want to express my gratitude to the International Women's Media Foundation for this invaluable recognition of my work, which began in Peru in 1999. It is an honor as a Latin American journalist to receive this award, which I would like to dedicate to my partner and my children. I am a journalist, I am also a mother, and I want to leave them and their generation a world where aggression against women who practice journalism is not the norm, but the exception. I also dedicate this award to my parents, Antonio and Margot. I also dedicate it to my colleagues, Pedro Eduardo Salinas, Carlos Rivera, Jason Day, Juan Carlos Cruz, Carlos Rodriguez, and Raiza Navarro. I also dedicate to the survivors of the sodalicio, José Enríquez Cardó, José Rey de Castro, Oscar Sterling, Martín Choy, Martín and Vicente López de Romaña, Arcángel Miguel, and to many others who I cannot name to protect their safety. and two exemplary fathers, whose children, Héctor Guillén Tamayo and Félix Neira, were kidnapped by the Catholic sect. Katharine Graham once said, "I had very little idea of what I was supposed to be doing, so I set out to learn. What I essentially did was to put one foot in front of the other, shut my eyes, and step off the edge. When I look back and remember why I dedicate myself to this passion called journalism, I feel that what Graham says is similar to what I do every day, and that despite the death threats I have received, the harassment on social networks, and the judicial harassment I suffer today, everything I have published has been worthwhile. As my mentor, the great Peruvian journalist Gustavo Gorriti says, fear should not be the editor of a journalist. I will continue to publish, and my only response to the attacks against me will be more and better journalism. Thank you very much."
Thank you, Paula. It really is humbling. We've heard that you have received slurs, received threats of being shot. You mentioned you're a mother and you've had to relocate your family for their safety. Congratulations on this award. And our final award this evening is devoted to journalists who end up imprisoned because of their work. Every year, the IWMF issues this award to honor those who do their jobs despite this ever-present danger. And tonight, the IWMF is pleased to introduce a new partner who recognizes this struggle. She is Wallis Annenberg, and thrilled to name this award in honor of her commitment to the organization. The Justice for Women Journalists Award will illuminate those whose dedication to courage and a free press truly goes above and beyond. Wallis joins us this evening to speak about why she is so dedicated to this issue, and she will also introduce the recipients of the award.
Thank you, Christiane. I am so proud to be with you tonight to honor the brave women journalists who are on the front lines of our most cherished freedoms and ideals. Having grown up in a newspaper family, it is unacceptable to me that journalism and truth are under siege right now. Too many journalists, especially women, are subject to harassment and attack simply for telling it like it is. That is why I joined the International Women's Media Foundation and the Justice for Women Journalist Award. This year, the award goes to two extraordinary women. I would describe them as having grit and determination. During their time with Belsat TV in Belarus, their coverage of protests against the government was met with political persecution and ultimately arrest by armed riot police and a 2-year prison term. Katerina Andreeva and Daria Hutsova have risked their lives every day, like so many journalists and photojournalists. It gives me great pleasure to recognize and honor your passion and your work. Thank you.
The scene in Minsk, Belarus last summer, after longtime dictator Alexander Lukashenko claimed a landslide victory. Riot police beat and arrested thousands of opposition protesters, including members of the press who covered the rallies. Katsiarena Andreeva and Daria Shultsova, two journalists just doing their jobs in one of the most repressive countries in the world.
What stood out about these two young women is their tenacity and their willingness to face the consequences no matter what.
Risking their lives during a time of unprecedented attacks on the press worldwide. The two women teamed up for Poland-based news outlet Belsat TV. Andreeva, a correspondent, and Shultsova, a photographer, covered violent protests in Belarus for weeks. Months later, as the government crackdown intensified, the two women holed up here. From a high-rise apartment, they live-streamed a rally in memory of an opposition activist. Filming through a window, determined to cover the story. Minutes later, armed police stormed the apartment building, breaking down the door. Both journalists were arrested and taken into custody.
К этой ситуации это абсурдная ситуация, потому что журналисты просто освещали акцию протеста. Мы все видели этот стрим.
This past February, surreal images surfaced of the young women caged in a Minsk courtroom as they awaited the verdict. The journalists were convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison for covering a protest of political repression. Remarkably, even after learning their fate, the women appeared victorious. Before the verdict, Daria Choltsova told the court, "I have a job that I love, and most importantly, a clear conscience. I want to devote all my energy to the creation of Belarus without political repression." Today, the two remain in prison, hoping for an appeal. Both say they still have no regrets about their profession.
Моя жена Катя говорила на суде, что в 2020 году, когда начались массовые протесты против диктатуры Лукашенко, она внезапно превратилась в военного корреспондента, потому что только с войной можно сравнить условия работы журналистов в сегодняшней Беларуси. Каждое утро, выходя из дома, она понимала, что может не вернуться. Силовики могут в нее выстрелить или без всяких оснований лишить свободы. Последнее в итоге и случилось. Власти отправили Екатерину и Дарью в колонию. Там их заставляют работать на фабрике практически без выходных и носить желтые бирки на одежде. Катя и Даша заплатили высокую цену за возможность донести до общества правдивую информацию. Но они убеждены, что все это было не зря. Они не сломлены и планируют вернуться в профессию. От имени Кати и Даши я хочу выразить жюри премии искреннюю благодарность за высокую оценку их работы и за поддержку свободной белорусской журналистики. Награда, которую получили Катя и Даша, помогает им почувствовать международную солидарность и еще сильнее мотивирует на то, чтобы, как говорит моя жена, с улыбкой переносить любые испытания. Живе свободное слово и живе Беларусь!
The epidemic of disinformation continues to challenge the work of the press. Claims of fake news are being used worldwide to discredit journalists and stop the press from holding power to account. Trust in the media builds when you see yourself in the stories you consume. The IWMF supports trustworthy news by funding diverse journalists, investing in local news, spotlighting who's behind the story, and putting those who smear the press on notice. If you believe in our mission, join us.
In closing tonight's awards, I'd like to thank you, Christian, for your incredible and ongoing support of the IWMF. Your work and your career have moved so many to strive to follow in your footsteps. And to all of you here with us, thank you. Your support is what enables us to keep women's voices in the news media. Your attention, care, and contributions help the IWMF to make an impact wherever help is needed. Each year, it seems the world gets darker for women journalists seeking to shed light. There is so much hate, and that hate translates to threats and attacks online and physically. So many do not want what is hidden to be revealed. It's our mission to support women journalists working under these difficult circumstances and to keep them in the news industries where their voices can be heard. To that end, the IWMF's Emergency Fund provides access to trauma support, medical care, relocation grants, legal aid, and more. Funding the IWMF's work provides immediate support for women journalists around the world, and more importantly, ensures survival for those in crisis. I ask you, please contribute to the IWMF by going to paypal.me/IWMF on your phone or on your browser. In this continued time of strain for so many people, we know that this is a big ask, but please know that no amount is too small and that it is truly people like you who help support our emergency aid programs. And finally, one more thank you to our partner of 15 years, the Bank of America. Your support has lifted the IWMF and the voices of women journalists, and for that, we are grateful. And now we'll go back to Christiane to close our event for this evening.
Thank you so much, Elisa. And I'm really struck that all the awards that we've just seen really point to one major issue, and that is the attack on democracy, whether deep-rooted democracies in the United States or Europe, or nascent ones in Afghanistan and in Asia. And we know, therefore, to thank these women journalists who we've honored tonight for defending democracy and pulling back the curtain and not letting it go undefended. So we just want to say again, thank you to Mira Devi and the Khabar Lahoriya team, to Vanessa Charlot, to Paula Ugaz, Katerina Andreev and Daria Khultsov, and of course, Cece Way of the Gwen Ifill Award. And so thank you all so much. We know how difficult it is for women to continue to do this job. And hopefully you've seen the courage behind the stories that they tell and the humanity. Good night to all of you.